Use Samsung reminders to remember the little daily things with your smartwatch. How to implement daily checklists, to-do lists, and automate you and your life with Samsung reminders. When it comes to remembering things, there is one device to beat them all, because it's always with you, except when charging. And no, I am not talking about your phone, because your phone, as nice as it is, has one fundamental flaw when it comes to functioning as a reminder. It has to be pulled out, and this means you aren't as likely to do the thing or to see the thing. Wouldn't it be cool to have a device that doesn't have to be unlocked and pulled out of your pocket when it comes to checking off the things you should be doing? Meet the smartwatch. It's always on your wrist. It's accessible. You only need to lift your arm and there you go. It can gently vibrate in case you want to wake up when sleeping in a hostel, for example, or to get up without waking up everyone, simply. Only one problem, or two rather. The first one is this: not everybody is in the Apple ecosystem. I don't really know much about the watches themselves, but the situation probably isn't even that much better when it comes to Apple Watches. Which situation, you may ask? The simple fact, to-do list apps aren't on your wrist. Even though the watches can be. Your favorite task manager, whether this is Outlook, Notion, Todoist, Google Tasks, Microsoft To Do, the only thing they run on is either a phone, tablet, or PC, but not a watch. There is Google's Wear OS. There is Apple's, I don't know what it is called, the Watch OS, and there is Tizen. Since first of all this article is about Samsung reminders, second of all I myself own a Samsung watch, namely the Galaxy Active 2, and this watch, apart from the newer Galaxy Watch 3, is probably the best overall smartwatch for Android users out there, working as a general smartwatch but also as a sports watch. We are with Tizen for now, which is Samsung's Watch OS, and therefore we can use everything Samsung is offering us. And since I also own a Galaxy S10, the Samsung ecosystem is ready to go. And that's a big advantage, because we have a few of the Samsung apps natively working with Tizen OS and your smartwatch, even your Galaxy Fit if you have one. So why is this such an advantage? Because you can actually use your watch with these apps. Of course, there still is the possibility to just display notifications of other apps on your watch, but that's not really what I was looking for. Also being able to maybe do a little bit more. Like, what if you could make checklists on your phones, then automatically have them on your watch? Therefore, you can remind yourself of everything you want to remind yourself of. And also give yourself the support you need. Checklists are essentially nothing else than to-do lists that should be done one after the other, linearly. Whereas to-do lists often need to be prioritized and scheduled. So what can you actually do? First, you can use your calendar to remind you of the things you should be doing right now. A calendar is mostly used for the big events in general, like an appointment, like dinner with family, like going to the gym. Then, on the other hand, you got your tasks. We as humans now get the job to match tasks with time slots. But that's often quite complicated. Therefore, it makes sense to break it down even more. Some do that simply by using their task manager. But what if you also put the smaller events into your calendar? What if you also scheduled far smaller time slots, like 10-minute time slots? Because 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference when it comes to everything that needs to be done. Elon Musk famously uses 5-minute blocks, but I think 10 minutes are short enough. Let's say you want to be more flexible, then stretching for only 10 minutes a day probably is enough if you are able to stick with it. What you now can do as a practical example is this. First, try to find a single time you will be able to do the 10 minutes of stretching as often as possible, maybe in the morning since there is nobody up yet. You then use Samsung Calendar to either access your Google Calendar, since Samsung Calendar works as a client for Google Calendar. Quite convenient, because Google Calendar is not on your Samsung watch, but Samsung Calendar is. Therefore, you just link its Google Calendar to your wrist, something otherwise not really possible. Again, apart from just using your watch to display your phone's notifications on your watch. That's nothing that happens on my watch though. The nice thing about Samsung Calendar is it has a very nice widget that lets you display all of your events one after the other. Google also has one, but it doesn't look as nice in dark mode. Let's say you get up in the morning and you want to stretch at 6 a.m. You therefore could schedule your stretch first on your calendar, essentially blocking this time. It's an appointment with yourself. Then add a Samsung reminder, and here is why this is so neat. Because you are stretching. Therefore, you don't hold your phone all the time. Same goes for running, working out, shopping groceries, waking up your kids if you have to hold your phone when doing things that require your hands. You effectively increase the chance of damaging your $1,000 phone and also reduce the effectiveness of doing the thing you wanna be doing. But your watch cannot just be dropped. It's slapped to your wrist. Now, the stretching starts. Of course, you could search for a YouTube video of stretches, but that takes time and your phone screen is small and doesn't stand on its own. Of course, you could try to remember the 5 stretches, but when starting routines like this, you simply don't know it already. You simply don't know it all already. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to start since you already would be doing the thing. What comes in handy now? Checklists, to-do lists on your phone. Only one problem. I already prepared the screenshots for another example for leaving the house. Kind of, unfortunate. Therefore, even though I built up the example of stretching, we just leave the house for now. Same time every single day. Probably, during normal times at least, but you forget to turn off the lights all the time and sometimes forget the keys or your phone or your watch. Oh wait, you cannot, see? But as you want to leave, there is this reminder on your watch, reminding you of all the things you need to do before you leave the house. Out of nowhere, your wrist vibrates. Reminder on your wrist saying lights, key, and you now can just check off all the items on your list before you check out. Very simple lists, very effective, and if you don't want to use them at any point in time, just don't use them. Don't lift your hand. But when in doubt, all these are on your wrist. Check them off by tapping once on the screen, or check your 5 to 10 different stretches off when stretching daily. Checklists are in all these industries where livelihoods depend on these seemingly so simple steps. But we as humans often forget because we think we know, but we don't. Therefore, not to paint a picture too broad here, implementing checklists also in our everyday lives just makes so much sense. Other use cases. Shopping lists that don't need to be that long. Also, when shopping, you probably shop with your hands, or you plug your phone into your shopping cart, which nobody does. You can remember exercises one after the other. You even could exactly time each exercise, giving you a small vibration every 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes. Ever had the problem of trying to look at your watch, timer, phone, clock when doing lunges or running? Well, Just take a glance at your wrist and you're good to go. Remembering to floss, another example. Just set a reminder for the time you usually go to bed and ta-da, it pops up. Remember to take your medication with these reminders, maybe the exact order. Remember saying goodnight to your kids. Remember to be thankful at the end of the day, and then check it off once it's done. Here is how the Samsung Reminders app looks with a few examples. So here we have the main window where you actually set up a reminder which consists out of the time itself. So you can set the time. You can also set a certain schedule which is either daily or weekly or monthly. I think you can even set yearly. Then you can also switch the type of notification from light to medium to heavy, I think. And then you have also the option for place, and you can save it either to reminder or to something else, which we will discuss right now. You can also set a place, another neat thing, which is a thing that made it from Bixby routines into here. Whenever you are at the gym, for example, the exercise list comes up. When you are not, it doesn't. Use different frequencies. Everything goes. Working out 3 times a week. Leave the house only on work days. Just set the reminders to that place, day and time. Another great thing, you can add images, like the image of how you could look like if you didn't eat a whole fridge, or if you just pushed a little harder in the gym. Basically, everything that cannot be formatted either as plain text, which is already good enough for small reminders, or quotes, like motivational quotes, like remembering to be grateful for everything you've got. But for something else, you can just use images that appear out of nowhere onto your wrist. Also, syncs with Microsoft To Do, which enables you to not only access these reminders and to-do lists on your watch and phone, but also on your computer. Pretty neat. Only bummer, doesn't support task lists and images. Looks like this. So you got either all tasks in reminders or only the Samsung reminders, and you also got the to-dos from Microsoft. Now you got everything you need to remember which stretches to do, what to shop, not to forget your keys, because as we all at some point probably already found out, not forgetting your keys is key.